Hello and welcome to Section 8, Optimizing and Connecting to Horizon View Desktops. So what are we going to cover in this section? In the first part we're going to look at the Horizon client options from a software perspective. So apps for Android, iOS, Mac, Linux and Chrome OS that allows a user to connect to their virtual desktop machines. We will then go on to look at some of the hardware based options, so thin clients, zero clients, and repurposing desktop PCs and laptops into thin clients. In the second section, we're going to have a look at optimizing the session and then looking at how to connect to a virtual desktop machine. So let's start by having a look at the client options. So the first client we're going to look at is for Android, and as you can see on the screen, these are screenshots from the Android client, this being client version 5.0. So on the left hand side we can see the first screenshot where you can log into the server. And then once we've logged into the server, in the second screenshot, we can see all our desktop pools and apps that are available to us. Then on the third screenshot, we can see that we've logged onto a desktop. And if we look at the semicircle icons here, then we can actually see the Unity Touch interface. So this allows us to swipe and pick icons quite quickly. So it's quite difficult to pick, the log off or the mouse, for example. So we can select them from the wheel. Then on the right hand side we can just see some of the other options available on the Android client. You can download this directly from the VMware website, or you can go to the Google Play Store and download it from there. Next we have the client for iOS, which looks very similar to the Android one. This is available from the Apple or iTunes store. Again, on the left hand side we can see we enter the server address and then we connect, and then in the second screenshot you can see that we have our desktop pools and apps displayed to us, along with the sidebar with the shortcuts to the apps, and then the apps on the right hand side. Next we have the version for the Mac, so the Horizon client for Mac. And again, once we've logged on, we can see we have our desktops and our applications. We just double click launch and that will launch inside the client. Then we have a client for Linux. So for Linux based desktops, we can connect to another virtual desktop. So again, we launch the client, enter the name of the connection server, log in, and then we can connect to our virtual desktop. We have the same for Chrome OS. So here we have a Chromebook. So now we can actually start to run Windows apps on Chromebooks. As long as we're connected and online, we can connect to our virtual desktops in our pools and our applications that are published. And then we can use the Chromebook as our client device. Then finally, we have the client for Windows. So here we see a screenshot from our example lab where we've connected to our connection server on the first screen, and then the one to the front we can see the 4 desktop pools that were created. If we wanted to launch the desktop, it's just a case of double clicking and then we can launch a desktop and we will be presented with the desktop screen. And finally we're going to have a quick look at the browser. So here on the left hand side we can see that we've basically gone to the URL of our connection server. Remember, if you put /admin on there, you'll get the admin console. And I think we mentioned when we did that, if you didn't put admin on the URL, then you will end up at this screen. And this screen gives you the ability to install the VMware Horizon client, or you can connect via HTML using the browser. You can also customize this screen as well. So you can actually go in and make this screen look a little bit more like your particular organization. Then once we've connected, if we're using the client, or in this case we've actually gone in using the browser, logged in, authenticated, we can see here the list of our 4 desktop pools and then the desktops within. So therefore we could just literally click on there and then we could connect. So that's our software based options, including the browser. So next we have our hardware based client options. So the first up is a thin client. So what is a thin client? So it has minimum CPU and memory. It has no moving parts, there's no fans, there's no spinning disks, and in fact it doesn't really have any disk space other than that is required to hold its operating system. It's low powered, just a couple of watts compared to a PC that's tens of watts, and it will run an operating system, so maybe Windows 10 IoT, maybe a Linux based OS, but a very cut down OS version. Then we have a zero client. The example here is one of the 10ZIG boxes. Again, it has minimum CPU and minimum memory specification, no moving parts, so no fans, no disks. It's low powered, but the difference from a thin client is that it doesn't have an operating system other than literally just a BIOS type approach. Basically, it has everything embedded on silicon, as it says, on a highly tuned onboard processor. So for VMware, this would be a PC over IP based solution, and it would be running one of the Teradata Terra based hardware chips. So it's perfectly optimized for running that particular profile of graphics and doing it in hardware and not in software. The other option is to repurpose PCs. So what we're talking about here is taking your standard desktops, laptops and existing thin clients and turning them into thin clients. And the example we've used here is a product called Thin Kiosk from a company called ThinScale. And what that allows us to do is repurpose any existing Windows device and turn it into a locked down Windows based thin client. The advantage there is that it supports all VDI vendors, so Citrix, Microsoft and VMware. If you were to deploy a zero client, obviously you're in a VMware environment, if you then change to something that used a different protocol, that device wouldn't work. You'd have to repurpose it somehow. You can't, it's hardware based. This is lower cost, you don't have to buy thin clients in the first place, use what you've already got, and that extends the life of the existing hardware and gives you the ability to save some funds in management. It looks and feels exactly the same as a thin client would, but it also has the advantage of running local apps as well, which a thin client doesn't have. So if you had some local apps you needed to run because, I don't know, VDI is offline or you're working remotely, you can still access local applications.